Hi everyone, nice to see you. We are in Montmartre right now and you can hear the bells. It's 6 o'clock, starting to ring. We are next to a windmill. It's not the Moulin Rouge yet. We're not going to go to the Moulin Rouge today. We go to the Montmartre of the infamous. We go to the Montmartre of the artists, of the poor. Moulin Rouge is for the wealthy and they stay down the hill because they don't want to get dirty. They don't want to get to the mud. They don't want to mingle with these class workers and artists who are not making a living yet. Today we're going to learn the story of the hill, some of the stories of the hill, why the name, where it comes from, what people used to do here, and we're going to learn a few little anecdote stories about the artists who live here, such as Renoir or Picasso. My name is Ferret and I am with Josephine today. We are from Paris and Beyond Tours, and I hope that you are going to enjoy the stroll in Montmartre. So let's start. Josephine will be here and she will tell me if you have any questions, if there is any issue with the connection. I'm going to stay as close as I can from the center of the streets so the connection stays better. You can always check on your browser if the resolution is to the maximum, like 1080 pixels. Otherwise, we'll do our best. So what is this Moulin de la Galette? So you can see one of the windmills here. There's another one a bit further. And these are the windmills that are maybe the most famous of Montmartre after the Moulin Rouge. But they are the ones that keep the essence, that keep the spirit of Montmartre alive. Why is that? There used to be 32 windmills on this hill, and since it's a hill you have a lot of wind, and they used to grind flour and the grapes. We used to have many vineyards on top of the hill, and the wine was not too bad until property market was a better market to exploit. Well, the hill of Montmartre, where does it take its name from? The hill of Montmartre takes its name from maybe Mount of Mars, Mount of Mercury, Mount of the Martyrs. Why is that? Because the Romans conquered Paris, 52 BC, and they love to put temples on top of hills, especially the ones of Mars, the god of war. He's going to have a temple at the very top, like often, and we are going to have next to it a place where people are going to be treated as martyrs, when the early Christians were actually being put on a cross on top of the hill. The hill is mostly filled with gypsum, what you make plaster with. There's a saying that says in French, il y a plus de Montmartre dans Paris que de Paris dans Montmartre. So there is more of Montmartre in Paris than Paris in Montmartre, because most of the plaster that was actually used to build all these wonderful timber houses in Paris was coming from the hill, and few other quarries, but mostly from the hill. It used to be like a Swiss cheese in Montmartre, and this is why the metro station in front of the Moulin Rouge is called Blanche, the white square. Well, now we're in front of Moulin de la Galette. I will come back on the history of Montmartre and its name and its origins a bit later. Look at these cute little buses that have been reshaped compared to the other ones in Paris to fit these tiny winding streets in the town of Montmartre. Because Montmartre people really consider themselves as special and not Parisians. They are called Montmartrois. So this is kind of a special treat. They even have their own republic, their own city hall. That's not completely legal. It was tuned down a little bit in the 1970s after they tried to have their own passport. You can imagine the conflict of interest with the French Republic afterwards. But now, Moulin de la Galette. What's the story of the Moulin de la Galette? The history of the Moulin de la Galette dates back to the 1600s. Maybe the windmill have changed, they've been restored. Of course, the building is not exactly the same. I'm not expecting these planks of wood to be dating from the 1600s. Anyway, it's just the family, the Debray family, who owned this, like this mill. families who own these two places, the one that we saw here and the one a bit downstairs that we saw at the very beginning, that decided in the 1800s to actually provide like a place to drink, a garden where people could play music, and became one of the most famous cabarets of Paris. This is where, in the 1820s, everybody is coming already. In the 1870s, there is a war, the Franco-Prussian War, and after this one, it became still famous. After the war, everybody comes back to the Moulin de la Galette. Ladies with fancy dresses, they come down from down the hill on the back of a mule to go all the way up so that they don't dirty their clothes. And this is a cheap place to drink, and they give you a cup of milk and a little pancake of rye. This is it. So, and this was fancy enough for the working class to come and dance. There is a painter that you may know called Renoir, who is going to immortalize these scenes of the upper middle class having these parties at the Moulin de la Galette. Today it's still a restaurant, and if you go to the Louvre, to the Orsay, sorry, you can enjoy watching this painting. Next to it you have Le Coq, which is a lovely restaurant for chicken. And now we're going to continue. Let's go to this little square where there is a man crossing a wall, Le Passe-Muraille. And it's a famous novel from the French writer called Marcel Aimé. Maybe you have heard about this. Story of a man who wakes up a morning, typical Frenchman, and realizes that he can cross walls. So he's really bothered by that. You know, the Marvel Studios weren't born in France, because even when you get a superpower in France, you want to complain about it. So this man, Mr. Utrillo, wakes up a morning and realizes he can cross walls. So what he's going to do? He goes to his doctor, of course. In France, it's covered by social security. You don't even need to have an insurance. So this man goes to his doctor. His doctor prescribes him a lovely treatment, 2 bags that looks like aspirin in powder. He takes one, and the next day he says, well, do I really want to not cross walls, right? It takes some time to go up to the brain. And he starts to steal. He starts to rob banks. And more importantly, because he's French, he starts to date women who are married. Eventually, one day, he's dating one of them. And he had a headache in the morning. So he takes another bag, the second bag, thinking it was just an aspirin. And guess what? When the husband comes back, he's caught in the wall when he tries to escape. Right? Wonderful French stories about superpowers. And so this has been made by Jean Marais. He's a famous actor and sculptor. And now it's spring. We can see all these lovely cherry trees blossoming. Yeah, the writer who wrote that novel was living inside this building. So if you want to buy an apartment here, it's going to cost you 10 or 15,000 euros per square meter. So 1,500 euros per square foot. And eventually, right, you can have a lovely view over this beautiful square and some theaters around. Right, some Mustang cars. People that are here are wealthy enough to buy themselves a wonderful vintage car. But let's say you're not rich enough. You're just a tour guide living in Paris, and you just want to enjoy life and have a free schedule. What do? Let's say you're a tour guide or not, but you want to live in Montmartre. And you don't want to rent, of course, right? You want to have your own place. So let's become an artist. And so what about becoming an artist? Then you will be able to enjoy more than 200 different locations in Montmartre. that are still trying to keep the spirit of Montmartre of the end of the 1880s, 1890s, 1900s, when all the artists were coming here. This is one of these places where artists can rent for like barely nothing, a 30 or 20 square meter for 200-300 euros for their workshop. And of course they don't have the right to live in it, but they just put a pull-out bed so that they can always live inside it when the controller comes. Like the controllers of these policy, they come, they say, "You're not living here, right?" And the man just put back his bed into a sofa and he said, "Of course not." So you have little parks around. Famous people live here, of course. People lived here as well. And there is this woman called Dalida. Maybe some of you know the songs of Dalida. Maybe my favorite of these songs is Parole, Parole. It's the story of a lady who doesn't take it anymore when a Frenchman tries to seduce her with these good old techniques like you know, your eyes are so bright, your parents must be thieves, they have stolen all the stars of the sky and put it in your eyes, so these kind of things. And so the song is really nice. You should look at it. It goes like parole, parole, parole. Parole, 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 parole. I won't continue, but it's nice. You can go on YouTube and you are going to have a wonderful song with Alain Delon and Dalida. Yolanda Gigliotti. She was Italian born in Egypt, and she moved back to France, and she made France the country of her heart. She had more than 40 gold records during her lifetime and recorded in more than 10 different languages. An amazing lady, and when she died, they dedicated to her in this little square. They dedicated to her this little square and the statue. Why here? Because this is the best view of the entire neighborhood. Look at that, with Montmartre in the background. You go down the street, and it's called Rue de l'Abreuvoir. The horses used to come down this way to get water and drink and supply themselves before they would continue. But let's come to Montmartre. You see, it's really hilly. Mont of Martyrs. There is one man who is a really famous martyr called Saint Denis. And supposedly he's the first man who came, the first bishop who came to Paris, and when 250s, and in 257, so seven years later, wow, he is not a driver, he's a pilot. So 257, within 7 years, he's an amazing man. He's going to convert so many people that the Romans get a hold on him and get him on top of the hill. He is walking with his cross from the middle of Paris, roughly from the city island where Notre Dame stands, to Montmartre, and he is going to be put on a cross. Of course, he's such a talker, he tries to converse the soldiers, the Roman soldiers, the two guys that are next to him. And they cannot take it anymore, they are tired, the sun is harsh, and they want him to stop talking. So what do? They take him off the cross and they cut his head off. At this moment, a beam of light comes out of his head. And when it comes out of his head, it's called a céphalophore, so a shining head. Two angels are going to come directly from the sky, and they are going to help him take back his head in between his hands, and he's going to walk 4 miles in the northeast direction towards the city called today after him, Saint Denis. So amazing martyr of Paris. And now we are going to go up a little. And so maybe Montmartre takes his name from Mont of Mars, Mont of Mercury, Mont of the Martyrs. Different explanations. So as you're walking, we're going to pass by La Maison Rose. We're going to talk about a lady called Suzanne Valedon. On the left, at the number 12, the building is not original to the 1880s, but this is where Pissarro, maybe you have heard of him. I will talk about him maybe if we do a tour about Orsay or in the Père Lachaise. Pissarro was living here at the 12. And we're going to talk about La Maison Rose, which is an institution since the 1800s actually. Suzanne Valedon was a dancer like many of us. She was a dancer. She was like a poor girl coming out of nowhere, trying to do several jobs when she was a young girl. She was a seamstress. She has been a washing lady, washing clothes, a laundry woman. And at some point, 14, 15, she starts to dance and enroll in a circus. She dances well, and she's then hired in one of the cabarets at the bottom of the hill. Great, you have the Moulin Rouge, you have others, l'Élysée Palace. These cabarets are like famous, and 17 years old, she breaks a knee. So what does a dancer with a broken knee is going to do of her life? Well, plenty of occupations here. You have people, 1880s, like Renoir, like Picasso, like Degas. Picasso is going to come a bit later, but like Degas, who are going to come, and we need models. And so she is going to model for them. And eventually, a few years into it, she also dates them. Renoir was married, but well, maybe it doesn't matter. We're in France, we're excused. She is going to want to study. She doesn't want to just be that pretty woman that poses for these fancy painters or trying to be fancy painters. And she will soon learn how to paint. She will also have a child that she will call Maurice. And what about this Maurice? Maurice. Eventually, she doesn't know who the father is. And the joke goes like this. She was hesitant for quite a while whether Maurice was the son of Renoir or Degas. And so what do you do in these situations? You do a paternity test? Of course not. And so we're 1900s, imagine. So how do? You teach the boy how to paint and draw. And as the boy learns, then she's going to show the wonderful works of art of her son to these two masters, right? Renoir and Degas. And so when she goes, the joke goes like this. When she goes to see Degas first, Degas says, look at this. I mean, the forms are completely odd. And then she goes to see Renoir, and Renoir looks at the paintings and the drawings, and he says, no, it's not possible. Cannot be my son. The colors are really bad. So what's happening next? She's there at the Maison Rose, and she meets a man called Utrillo. The last name Utrillo. He's an architect. And what about Utrillo? As well, like at this moment of history, until 1950s in France, you just need to be an artist to become an architect. You get a diploma of architecture throughout the Beaux-Arts School of France, not from a proper architect. This man says, I will take him, I will adopt him, I will put my name on it. And when people were asking him, are you not outraged that this is not your son? You put your name on that bastard, basically. He says, well, I'm never going to be a famous painter or artist. I don't really care to put my name on Renoir or Degas' work. So that's how it was settled. And so where are we now? As you saw, there was a little vineyard. We talk about the vineyards in 2 seconds. At the very top of the hill, you see a bell tower. And this is Montmartre and the Sacred Heart of Montmartre. And this is the Lapin Agile. And so what about the Lapin Agile? This is where my favorite stories comes. So imagine, Impressionists are already famous. To me, Impressionists are not really the kind of painters that were like cursed painters and that they never lived in wealth. Eventually, Claude Monet had a patron when he was young, which was an auntie who didn't have children, so he was kind of sponsored by her to go to wonderful private academies. And the Swiss Academy to study painting, where she left after 2-3 months. And this is where he met all of his friends, Sisley, Degas, Pissarro, Renoir. But, after, the generation just after, they had a bit more harsh times. There is this Pablo Picasso coming with nothing from Spain. He arrived in Orsay train station in 1904. He comes to Montmartre because there is not a single And he comes often to the Lapin Agile. This is today's the oldest cabaret of Paris. You can see there is a rabbit here coming out of a saucepan. You see that? It used to be called the Cabaret of the Assassin. And one day there is a cartoonist called Andrew Gile, who is going to paint this little panel. This is a copy, by the way, but it's really nice. It's made like as if it was original. And who is going to draw this thing? A rabbit coming out of a pan, and you have a little bottle of wine holding in his paw. And because behind that Lapin Agile cabaret, the man who was in charge of it, Père Frédé, was actually growing, raising rabbits in order to feed his customers. It was really a cheap meal. I mean, everything in France, every famous dishes today that we're known for, like whether it's frogs, rabbits or snails, it's just because you don't have enough money to pay your beef. So right now it's called the Lapin Agile, so the rabbit of Gile, and so with a twist of time it became the Agile rabbit. So what about this? What happened in this? Several stories, but my favorite one is about a painting. I'm going to show that painting in an Instagram post a bit later. You can go on Paris and Beyond Tours on Instagram and follow us, because I'm going to post the painting of an artist called Joachim Boronali. And so what about Boronali? Boronali is kind of a scam started in 1910s. And there is a man called Roland d'Orgelès, who is a young man, young journalist in his mid-20s, who has enough in 1911 of the supremacy of Impressionists, like Monet, who is now a close friend to Clemenceau, soon president of France. So these young men, they have enough of these Impressionists there, name Impressionists, pointillists that were born in Montmartre as well, like Pissarro. So they have enough of Impressionism, and all these critics of art only praising Impressionism. So what do? They get a donkey, the donkey of this cabaret, and they get the donkey right here in this place. And so when they get the donkey, they're going to put a brush at the tail of a donkey and feed him cucumbers, which the donkey loved. And they're going to paint a canvas, yellow on top, blue at the bottom, and they're going to brush red strokes in the middle with the donkey's tail. And because of that, it became an amazing Impressionist painting, right? It was like a new wave of Impressionists. And they presented this as in an exhibition, and they wrote even a pamphlet, right? It's called Excessivism, right? The new wave of Impressionists. And they're going to hide the identity of the painter, the donkey, for a good month. And all the critics of Paris are going to be amazed and mesmerized by the quality of this painter. And they want to know more until they revealed who actually did the painting. So that's my favorite story about these scams of these young men getting enough of the Impressionists. Now, Vineyards of Montmartre, one of the last 4 or 5 vineyards that you can find in Paris. 2,500 vines, mostly 2 grapes. There used to be about more than 40 different types of grapes in this vineyard. And now there is mostly Gamay and Pinot Noir, so what you can find in the Beaujolais region. Here we have got what we call la Fête des Vendanges. And with the Fête des Vendanges, you will have a huge party, some up to 200,000 people coming to Paris, to Montmartre, to celebrate the wine picking ceremonies. So this is one of the highlights of the year, and this is what saved actually this wonderful little vineyard, because in the 1930s, 1933, this was supposed to be developed just like anything else around. You know, when you look at these buildings, Art Deco style, so they wanted to build more, but the people living in it decided that it was not going to keep and preserve the spirit of Montmartre. And they just planted few vines inside this plot in order to save it, because to unpluck vines in France, it's so hard. You have to go through so many administrative paper, and you know, God knows how efficient our French administration is. And because they planted some vines, the projects of building condominiums with concrete was aborted. So now we go towards the top of the hill, towards the village of Montmartre. So far so good. How are you doing? The connection is going to be a bit sketchy, so I'm going to pause 2 seconds, see what we can see. I would love to live in these houses, isn't it? Wouldn't you? Come to these places, look at the terrace over there. Of course they have a view over Montmartre, over the Sacred Heart. Look at this. So who is that man now? Do you recognize him? So Van Gogh is going to live and spend some time in Montmartre as well. Not too long, about a year and a half, before he went to the south and painted the Starry Nights in Arles and the Starry Nights back in Utrillo. So look at this. This is the Moulin de la Galette painted by Van Gogh. So you can see, this is the windmill that we just saw a bit before. Now we go to a café restaurant, La Bonne Franquette. Can you still hear me well? Oh, lovely, this is La Bonne Franquette. And so what about La Bonne Franquette? What does it mean? Bonjour.
Bonjour.
Comment ça va?
Ça va, on vous attend.
Ah bah oui.
Le bateau il est à quai là pour l'instant.
Le bateau il est à quai.
Voilà, on vous attend.
Ça roule.
Avec les champagnes.
Avec le champagne.
Ah oui.
So you hear that? You're welcome with champagne when you come.
Des grandes maisons.
How pretty is it? So La Bonne Franquette, what does it mean? Well, this is a place where you can come with your friends, and you come with your friends in order to relax, chill, drink. We are during a siege in Paris in 1870, 6 months of siege about, where wine was cheaper than water. It was really harder to get clean water in Paris than it was to get wine. We never run out of supplies when it comes to alcohol in Paris, but of clean water it's sometimes a disaster. And I'm just going to get close a little bit here. Hop, look at this. So the Republic of Montmartre, 1920 to 2020, 100 years. And every year they celebrate, like they vote for a fake mayor, because Montmartre is now included in Paris. Until 1863, Montmartre was out of town. The limit was the border where the Moulin Rouge stands at the bottom. So, I mean, Moulin Rouge came a bit later. Moulin Rouge was built in 1889 during the French World Fair when the Eiffel Tower was built. Sunset over Montmartre. Yeah, a lot of wind today, and I didn't take my dead cat. Yeah, this is how we call this this thing that you put on the mics. I will think about it next time, I'm sorry. So the streets are getting quieter because in less than 30 minutes we are going to be on lockdown again. But let's see how much life there is still on the Place du Tertre, one of the most famous, if not the most famous square of Montmartre. The most touristy one as well. If you come to Montmartre, maybe next tour we're going to talk about this. We're going to go to Abbesse, which is a bit lower in on the hill. Every time people ask me, and because I receive some messages between like the last tours and now, of where to get the best crepes of Paris, and it's like, how many times you get the topic, you know, how many top 5 best crepes of Paris you can go. Some restaurants even specialize in it today. I would say a best crepe is when you don't see a pile of crepe, when it's freshly made like this one. But to satisfy all your appetites, next week I'm going to do a free workshop with my daughter, because to show you how easy it is to make amazing crepes. I have a secret ingredient, and it's mostly the recipe of my grandma, no sugar. So it's going to be amazing, I hope, for you.
So we have a question earlier about how much it costs to do a portrait.
How much it costs to a portrait?
We can ask.
We can ask.
There's still one here.
Yeah, let's ask directly, because it varies a lot. I would say between 20, 30 euros. It depends how fast you want it to be. Earlier when we were like checking the routes for connection, it was with a couple who stayed more than an hour to do it. He doesn't do portraits.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Excusez-moi, pour un portrait, c'est combien?
20 euros.
20 euros?
20 euros.
Ok. Merci beaucoup.
Pour photo?
Pour 2 personnes, ce serait combien?
Ouais, non, que 20 euros si vous voulez maintenant.
Ok, c'est juste pour savoir. Merci beaucoup. Bon courage. So, about 20 bucks if you want to get a portrait, ladies and gentlemen. If you're on top of the hill and you want to enjoy a little bit of sweet treats, you can always go to Galette. One of their first shops was next to the Place des Vosges, and they have a lovely way to do their macarons. A Café Galette. Look how lovely this is. Crepes, Gogh. So if you want to buy art in Montmartre, bonjour. If you want to buy art in Montmartre, you better buy it from these artists actually. And they do it. They have only there is about 100, 150 of them, and there is a limited amount of license. They all have to have studied art and in a proper Beaux-Arts school in France. And then they have the right to apply here, and it's like only given by lottery. They have their place to hide their stuff, their paintings, locked basically, in the street nearby. Some guys would tell you that Claude Monet was like making these some of caricatures when he was coming back to Paris. Eventually Claude Monet did a lot of satirical drawings, but when he was younger and living in Le Havre, just before he met his master or his mentor to paint outside, called Eugene Boudin, the man who told him that he should look for the chasing the light and try to paint that outdoors directly with his painting tubes. Now we arrive at a place where you can see the rooftops of Paris. The view is going to be stunning. We may even be able to see the Eiffel Tower. Let's see how good the light is. Today we still have some art in Montmartre. We have some Space Invaders, if some of you know about him. My favorite street artist at the moment. It's easy to love him. Can you see the Eiffel Tower? Oh, welcome to Montmartre. This is the best spot you can catch it from the walking path. But what I really like is this, just underneath it. What have you got? You've got a lovely terrace here. You've got a lovely terrace there where people are hanging out. There's a legend that says that the Red Hot Chili Peppers were once playing over there. So I have a question about where is the cemetery. So you have several cemeteries on top of Montmartre. When we were next to the Lapin Agile, you had the St. Paul Cemetery, and you have the Cemetery of St. Peter of Montmartre. So you have the Sacred Heart here, Sacred Heart right here. We're going to get closer to it. Then you have just behind this building St. Peter of Montmartre. This is, by the way, where in 1534 Ignace of Loyola started the Jesuit orders. And just behind this place, you have a little cemetery where monks are buried and other few people of Montmartre are buried. The cemetery of Montmartre, though, is a bit further. You have to go back to Moulin Rouge, walk towards Place de Clichy, and turn to the right. And you will have a cemetery split by the metro, like a bridge, and you will have like the cemetery going under the bridge. This is where Dalida is buried. This cemetery of Montmartre was opened, as well as the one of Passy, as the one of Montparnasse, and the Père Lachaise where Jim Morrison is buried in 1804. I'm just walking here 2 seconds to show you one of the best attractions of Montmartre for your dogs. This is what we call a dog park. There are several of them in Paris. Since there are not too many places, dogs are welcomed. You can always relax with your pets when you come to this place.
Mais non. On va lui dire.
Le Chevalier de la Barre, 19 years old, was actually kind of murdered in the street because he didn't bow when the king was passing by. 1760s, before the French Revolution. Do you know anything about the Wallace fountains? This comes together with the Sacred Heart, actually, 1870s. So after the civil siege of Paris in 1871 and the rare access to supplies, there is a philanthropist, a man called Wallace, coming from Scotland, original. This man decided to offer to Paris a system of water that would be clean and safe for all Parisians in the capital, the City of Lights. It's kind of the same reason why we have got the Sacred Heart today. Why do we have the Sacred Heart?
Find the one she can take it out on, and so it's very possible that she will. Yeah, I mean,
We have the Sacred Heart because at some point of our history, people thought it was going to be the end of the world. And they thought it was going to be the end of the world in the 1870s. So imagine, 1870 there is the Franco-Prussian War. Within 6 months, we lost that war. Within few weeks, actually, after a terrifying battle in Sedan, Napoleon III, the nephew of Napoleon I, is captured by the Prussians. They are going to sign a treaty of peace in Versailles. That treaty of peace in Versailles is going to be humiliating, and this is when Germany got Alsace and Lorraine. Well, France is not going well. Paris has been besieged by the Prussians for a while, and now there is a civil war. So after the civil war, imagine you have a defeat, civil wars. During the civil wars, about 20,000 people in Paris got killed. It's called the Commune of Paris. It's still a story that's not well told. The conservators that came back to the power thought that the morality of France has gone so low since the French Revolution because of the people who kill gods and kings that we have to pay repentance. And eventually they decided in 1872 that would be for the prosperity of France, for re-establish a good morality of France, to France, that we should have a wonderful church built on top of a hill as a monument to it. Just, I'm pausing here 2 seconds because sometimes you can see these information tournage. This is when they are about to shoot a movie here. And so usually they give you the dates on it. And so it's going to be the 3rd of April from 10 to midnight 30. So if you come back tonight, you can be in a movie maybe and be part of the figuration. So there are movies shot every day, everywhere in Paris. Isn't that a beautiful church? And it's a symbol of France. Today it's a symbol of Paris, the Sacred Heart of Montmartre. You remember I told you there were quarries in Paris? Thing is that these quarries made Montmartre such a bad place to build such a church. And eventually, when they built it, they had to dig pillars underneath it, about 30 pillars, to support the church. But it was not enough. They had to fill the quarries with all of what Paris was producing with rubble. When you have got the Osmanization until the 1870s, they didn't know where to put the trash of all these buildings they were destroying. So they started to use the quarries of Paris and some wastelands around the city. But they actually filled the quarries, built concrete pillars, and they managed to build this wonderful church. The thing is that it went over budget several times, and they had to ask for donations. So when you come inside it, I won't be able to film inside it, and let's be a bit respectful of these cool places. So when you go inside it, you will see a lot of little panels saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. It's about 10 over 20 centimeters panel, and they are everywhere inside in the facade church. This is a Neo-Byzantine style church, and you see two elements, two characters that were at their time saving Paris. On the right side, this lady, and she is called Joan of Arc. On the left side, this man is called Saint Louis. We're going to dedicate a webinar to the Saint Chapel of Paris and this man. The only king who made it to sanctity, Saint Louis, is holding in his left hand the crown of thorns of Jesus because he brought it back to Paris. And she, Joan of Arc, you can see a woman dressed with a sword hiding a horse. So great characters, saviors of France at their times. And there is something really special inside this church. Since it has been open, and even before that actually, more than 120 years from today, there has been what we call the perpetual adoration. And this perpetual adoration, there is people coming here to pray for the holy bread, the body of Christ actually. And you can see written right here, Cor Jesu Sacratissimum. And so that this is the right, and this is the body of Christ is sacred. So eventually, at the back of this church, you can come and pray for it. There is a praying jubilee that has been on for the last 120 years, and you can volunteer. You can go on the website of this church, and you can take turns, whether it's during the day or during the night. And if you take it during the night, it will cost you 5 or 7 euros to sleep inside the monastery that's behind, and they will provide breakfast. You will be able to live with the monks a little bit, and you will have to pray 2 hours in front of this holy bread. Eventually, this has never ceased, even during bombings, even during the First, the Second World War, never mattered. They always pray straight. So Montmartre is really in between these two places, the red Moulin Rouge, the white church, between the artist life and the religious life. So I hope that you enjoyed that little tour. And this was Paris and Beyond with Ferit and Josephine. Hi there. And here is Josephine, right, helping me, answering your comments while we're doing this tour. And I really thank you all to be part of this tour and to join us, to watch it with us. And these tours are run for free. If you want, you can support us to help us to continue giving these free activities, and you can tip us. There is a link that has been given by Josephine a little bit earlier. And most importantly, so we are passionate tour guides. We're going to continue doing this next week. Josephine is going to do a tour called Paris and Her Story. She was supposed to do it last week, but she was not really feeling well, so we did the catacombs instead. But next week she will be there, and it's going to be Paris and Her Story, and the lesser told stories woman. So Paris and Her Stories. Please join us. And in 2 weeks, our colleague Will is going to give us a walk. And it's the tour is going to be called A Movable Feast. And it's going to go around the stories of Paris in the Roaring 20s, talking a lot about all these writers like Hemingway, Gertrude Stein, Fitzgerald, Zelda, all of these. And it's going to be an amazing tour, A Movable Feast. Paris est une fête in French. So enjoy the view. I hope that you really like the tour. Oh, but let's still look at the Sacred Heart. Do you have any questions? We're here for you. Let's go down the staircase. Maybe some of you have seen the movie Amélie, right? Amélie in Paris. No, this is Emily in Paris. And you have Amélie, le fabuleux destin d'Amélie Poulain. Around Montmartre. It's like Amélie from year 2000. Taking place in Montmartre, mostly in Montmartre, only in Montmartre. And you should all watch this movie if you want to figure of feminism. She would identify herself like this in the 1870s. But she was a face of what we call the commune, so of the people resisting here to the Prussian first, and then to the power that just took place in 1871, the new republic, the Third Republic. Can you see actually in the horizon line this place, the green place on the hill? This is still in Paris. This is what we call the Père Lachaise. This is where Jim Morrison, Chopin, Oscar Wilde are buried. But also Jericho, the painter of the Raft of the Medusa. David, the one who painted Napoleon crossing the Pyrenees. So we take notes, Lynn, the Paris wife. And of course, so keep tuned, stay tuned for this week, because I've had like 2-3 messages already about the crepes over the last 2-3 weeks. And so I'm going to do it maybe Tuesday, Wednesday. I'm going to post on this and like keep you up to date. Of course, I'm going to send on the Facebook page of Paris and Beyond Tours the recipe of the crepes. And so you have the time to gather the ingredients 2 days prior to this whole thing. It is going to be completely free. I mean, it's fine. I don't need to ask for donations for these kind of little workshops. It's going to be like a moment we can all share. And my daughters love to try to flip them and ruin them on the floor. So we're going to see what we can do with these crepes. Thank you very much for your messages. Thank you to be part of the tour. Next time we come to Montmartre, we go more towards the Moulin Rouge, and we're going to talk about Jane Averill, about the Goulu, about Toulouse-Lautrec. How beautiful is that? And so the name of the Facebook page is Paris and Beyond Tours. Bonsoir, Lynn. And so, how was the book, Rosemary? Let's go and have a look at the carousel. Spring is coming. So, goodbye everyone. See you next time.